Hi, everybody. This is Stefan Molyneux from Freedom Maine. Hope you're doing well. Been a little bit of a while since I've done one of these. This is the truth about the Minneapolis ICE shooting that happened yesterday. Usual caveats. I'm not a lawyer or an expert. These are all just subjective opinions. I will provide the sources in the published final show. So let's get to what's happening. Renee Nicole Good, 37, fatally shot by ICE agent during immigration enforcement operation. South Minneapolis near East 34th Street and Portland Avenue, about a mile from the George Floyd site. Not really a coincidence there when you think about it, or as we'll reason about it. The victim, of course, Renee Good, 37-year-old U.S. citizen and a mother of three. Absolutely horrifying. So what was the incident? ICE agents approached Good's vehicle during a large-scale operation. She was shot multiple times after the vehicle began moving, after she hit the gas. The federal account from the DHS and the Trump administration is that the agent acted in self-defense. The woman Good allegedly tried to ram officers. Vehicle ramming, domestic terrorism is the way that it's described. Local account from Mayor Frey and Governor Waltz, witnesses and video. No clear attempt to hit agent. Vehicle appeared to be fleeing. Shooting disputed as unnecessary. The aftermath. The usual suspects, widespread protests and vigils, schools closed Thursday and Friday, National Guard activated, FBI leads investigation, state investigation report limited access. What are they saying? Innocent poet and mother executed by racist ICE, shot in the face for peaceful protest, shot while sitting in her car. Vigils, white roses, blood-stained snow, immediate cries of murder, state violence. Local leaders condemn federal agents within hours. Why does the narrative form before the facts? Well, we'll get into the philosophical reasons behind all of this in just a moment. So, what actually occurred? Well, the ICE agents were conducting lawful immigration enforcement. A mob forms, blocks officers. This woman was part of that blocking. Renee Good, in vehicle, is ordered to exit. She accelerates towards the agents using the car as a deadly weapon. She hits the gas with the car, pointed at an officer. He would hear it gun on the snow, right? So you got to take this most. An SUV is a big car. And you are an officer, and we'll get into what happened with the officer 6 months ago, which is very relevant. So you're looking at the car, maybe you can see the woman, and the road is icy, and she hits the gas, but the tires haven't bit into the ground yet. They haven't hit the tarmac. And so as soon as they melt through, then it's going to lurch forward and you're dead. You can't see which way the wheels are pointing very easily because you're right in front of the car, so you don't know if you go to the left, if you go to the right, if you stand, you can't jump on the car because that's a very dangerous place to be catapulted from as well. So he has probably less than a second to make a decision about how to save his life with a 6,000-pound giant explosive weapon gunning at him. The officer fires through the window in self-defense. Agent is struck by the vehicle and hospitalized, according to some reports. I mean, that's not an execution. That's defense against assault. Now, somebody wrote on X, I worked with the Biden with the Biden White House and DOJ to develop a policy on when can federal police shoot in a moving vehicle. DOJ adopted it in 2022, and as far as I know, it hasn't been repealed. Here's what it says, quote, firearms may not be discharged solely to disable moving vehicles. Specifically, firearms may not be discharged at a moving vehicle unless, one, a person in the vehicle is threatening the officer or another person with deadly force by means other than the vehicle, or two, the vehicle is operated in a manner that threatens to cause death or serious physical injury to the officer or others, and no other objectively reasonable means of defense appear to exist, which includes moving out of the path of the vehicle. Firearms may not be discharged from a moving vehicle except in exigent circumstances. In these situations, an officer must have an articulable reason for this use of deadly force. Now, do DOJ standards apply to the DHS? Some people say no. As somebody else wrote, as soon as this is Renee Good, accelerated with the officer in front of her, she committed the 20-year version of a Section 111B offense. At that moment, she became a fleeing felon and a deadly or dangerous threat to the community that justified the use of deadly force. The case law in favor of the officer is robust and rock solid. So this is something I talked about many years ago, which is that if you assault a police officer or you endanger a police officer or a law officer, and then you flee, then he can use force or she can use force, because now if you flee, then you're a dangerous fugitive in the neighborhood. You might take hostages, they got to find you. It's a very dangerous situation. So this is the video. Be warned, it's obviously disturbing, but there's no blood or violence in what we see here. So this is the woman's car, and she backs it up. They tell her to get out. She backs it up. She turns the wheel. You can see the wheel is turning there, and then she goes forward, and then there's you can see poof. That's the poof of the shot. I think there were 3 shots, and I think she's dead and down. So, of course, you don't do that. You don't flee when police officers or ICE agents are telling you to stay. Okay, so here you can just see the officer right there is jostled aside by the car. A pretty terrifying situation, and that's what occurred. So let's look at the sequence. 1, agents arrive to enforce federal law. 2, the crowd surrounds and blocks them, all being woke heroes and so on. 3, vehicle is ordered to stop/exit. Driver refuses. Accelerates at officers. Immediate lethal threat. Defensive fire. Woman dies. Right? That's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can't start the story at step 6 and call it the truth. Now, of course, ICE agents have faced an unprecedented spike in car attacks, surging by some 3,200% over the last year, which was pretty horrifying. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said that the shooting, which remains under investigation, was an act of self-defense, and that the Goods had been stalking and harassing ICE agents in Minneapolis throughout the day. This is this woman and her lesbian wife, lover, I suppose. Rebecca, the Goods' partner, who was confronting ICE agents outside of the SUV at the time of the shooting, was filmed sobbing, "It's my fault," after the shots rang out and she realized Renee had been struck. "I made her come down here. It's my fault," she said, her face covered in blood after rushing to her partner's aid. So, of course, the humanization happens. Mother of 3, poet, wonderful mother, amazing person, lived nearby, super caring for the neighbors. This is the Trayvon Martin picture when he was 12 kind of shot. It's a standard elevate the person to sainthood to tweak the emotions of reactive and irrational people. However, she did participate in the blockade of federal offices. She chose to weaponize her vehicle against armed agents. Now, of course, people can say, and they do, and we'll get to this in a sec, people say, no, but she panicked. She didn't mean to. Nobody will ever know because she's dead. And even if she wasn't dead, you can't read minds if people choose to lie. So we will never know. Nobody will ever know. So anybody who says, well, she just panicked and hit the gas, and it's like, you don't know. You have no idea why she did what she did. And it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. If someone's waving a gun at your face and yanking at the trigger, and they think the safety is on, and they think they're just making a really, really terrible joke, can you use force to protect yourself? Yeah, well, no, didn't mean to. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if she panicked. For me, I mean, morally, right? Legally, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that, but what on earth would it matter? And you will never know. So people who make these things up, and I'll get to this in a bit, but people who make up these motives are like, I can commune with the dead and I know exactly her state of mind. You don't. Nobody ever will. So it doesn't matter why she gunned the car at the agent. It only matters that she did. Sympathy for what some people are calling a tragedy does not rewrite cause and effect. So the Instant Matter Factory goes into its regular motion. Some activist networks mobilize within hours, identical signs, chants, press releases. murder declared before the body cam footage is even out. Of course, the parallel with Floyd and others, the script is pre-written. And there's, a real big question about how can you even get signs that fast? So yeah, when facts threaten the narrative, emotion replaces evidence. Now, Ross was the guy who shot and was, as it looks like, hit by the car. So I'm going to take you back 6 months, because it's really, really important. So ICE agents, including Ross, attempted to arrest a 39-year-old illegal immigrant from Guatemala or Mexico with a prior conviction for sexually assaulting a minor, his 16-year-old stepsister, in 2022. The suspect refused to comply during the arrest attempt at his residence or during a related traffic stop. This is in June of 2025. So Ross, the ICE agent, broke the rear window last summer of the vehicle to reach in and unlock the door. The driver accelerated, trapping Ross's arm inside the vehicle and dragging him approximately 50 to 100 yards. Reports vary from 50 yards to over 100 yards, some saying up to 300 feet. Ross eventually broke free or was knocked loose, but sustained serious injuries, including deep lacerations to his right arm, requiring 20 stitches, and left hand, 13 stitches, plus other cuts and abrasions, totaling around 33 stitches in most accounts. So this is the same officer that had the car gunned at him 6 months later and shot. So this June 17th, 2025 incident occurred because local authorities in Hennepin County declined to honor an ICE detainer after Roberto Carlos Munoz Guatemala's 2022 conviction, leading to his release back into the community instead of transfer to federal custody for deportation. Of course, it's a sanctuary city, which means that local law enforcement is not required. In fact, it may even get into trouble for enforcing ICE directives. In December 2022, Munoz Guatemala was convicted in Hennepin County, Minnesota, of felony fourth-degree criminal sexual conduct, repeated sexual abuse of his 16-year-old stepdaughter. At the time of his arrest/conviction for that offense, ICE issued an immigration detainer requesting local authorities hold him for up to 48 hours beyond his release date so ICE could take custody for removal proceedings. He was illegal, undocumented, whatever the latest phrase is. Hennepin County and Minnesota's broader sanctuary-style policies did not honor the detainer, as is standard under state guidance that local law enforcement lacks authority to detain solely for civil immigration violations without a judicial warrant. He was released without notifying ICE, allowing him to remain free until the June 2025 enforcement action. So this is an example of how sanctuary policies endanger agents by forcing risky community arrests of individuals with criminal histories who could have been detained earlier. So if he's an actual criminal, honestly, do not understand this. I'm sure somebody can explain it to me. Do it like M5. If they say, well, we can't detain him just for immigration stuff, it's like, yes, but he sexually abused his daughter, stepdaughter. It's not just an immigration thing. It's a child molester. All right, so what are we talking here? Of course, everybody needs the immediate release of the body cam, dash cam, witness videos. We need independent forensic reviews, no canonization or condemnation until evidence is examined. Demand the truth, reject prefabricated outrage, and be strict with people. And I tried to do this on X. So the moment people start hallucinating these invisible intentions, she just panicked, she meant this, she didn't mean that, she didn't know this, just tune them out. They're living in a very bizarre fantasy world where they can mind meld with the dead and know what their intentions were. Intentions are very tough to figure out, even with people you know very well. Someone halfway across the country who's in the morgue, you cannot figure out their intentions. There was a witness to the deadly ICE incident who said, quote, she was the main car leading the protest. She was very successful in what she was set to do. So it looked like she was consciously impeding federal officers. Asked what the question was, and this person said, oh, definitely, yeah, that was her goal. This is wild to me, honestly. Like, this woman, her husband died quite young, Renee, a couple of years ago, and then I guess she's married or shacked up with this other woman, and who seemed to be filming, right? And so if the other woman was filming, then she kind of just been leaving. Renee kind of just been leaving because her wife was filming all of this, I think. So if that's the case, then she wasn't just taking off. It was a hero video or some sort of status video, or we're going to get him kind of video, right? Because this is all the propaganda about how ICE are just Nazis and white supremacists and racists and murderers, and they're just thrashing wildly like piñatas American citizens left, right, and center. So you get people wound up that hysterically, and they can get pretty violent. And of course, the big issue that came out of this area recently was all of these Somali scammers, right, who were taking billions of dollars for these fake daycares and things like that. So you got 3 kids involved here. So orphaning your own helpless children to pretend to protect Somali scammers for some sort of social media views is really an absolute act of evil betrayal. If you want to be some lunatic protester, I don't recommend it, but if you want to be some lunatic protester, don't have kids. Once you have kids, well, your first primal and absolute responsibility is towards your children, not to the Somali scammers who probably don't know you at all or have much comprehension of what's going on. I mean, yeah, just imagine, it's a wild thing. Imagine the years of propaganda it takes for you to gun your car at an armed government agent. You know, everyone thinks it's a main character syndrome. They think, I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to be the Princess Leia. I'm going to survive the fight. And it's like, no, you're a red shirt extra in just about every one of these situations. You are going to end up with a bullet through your head through the windshield. You're going to end up in court, in jail, in something like that. You are not Luke Skywalker. You are a red shirt extra, and you are probably going to go down. Because like propaganda aims to demoralize you, of course, teach you to hate, and have you make terrible decisions in crucial moments. How much did she feel like, this is being filmed? I don't know, right? So I just said, don't read motives. I don't. I mean, she could have suicided by cop for all I know. But I can imagine a situation where she's like, I'm being filmed. My wife is watching me. This is going to be heroic. I'm going to show these guys. I'm going to bust through and all of that. Break the line. And it's like, but that's not how the world works. There are men with guns who have to enforce laws. And those laws will be enforced at the point of a gun because all laws are enforced at the point of a gun. So to choose uncaring strangers from the other side of the world over your own flesh and blood children is absolutely wild. And it does bother me when people refer to this as a tragedy. Like, it's a tragedy when someone gets a fatal illness through no fault of their own. It's not a tragedy when someone goes crazy rogue, confronts cops, and then plays Russian roulette with an SUV. That is not a tragedy. That is not a tragedy. That if somebody drives drunk and wraps their car around a pole, that's not a tragedy. I'm just glad it was a pole rather than somebody else. So what are other people saying? Well, the officers instigated the problem. It's like, well, no, that's what federal agents do, right? If you've been interfering with their work, which multiple witnesses have said that Renee did, if you're interfering with their work, then you are committing a crime. They're not instigating anything. ICE has no authority over a U.S. citizen. Well, I don't think that's true. I think that federal agents can detain or arrest citizens in plenty of situations, and in particular, if you're interfering with their lawful pursuit of their duties. So people are saying, well, there were masked men around her, but no authority. She had every right to escape. No. Again, and there does seem to be lots of evidence for this. Again, all of this is preliminary. It's a very developing situation, but this is not that at all. So it wasn't just that there were these strange sand people outside her, the glass of her SUV. No, that wasn't the case. She was literally there, apparently, because ICE was there and she wanted to interfere with them doing their job. So the idea that she would go and shadow and block ICE while having no idea that ICE was around is, I don't know how do people say this stuff with a straight face. I have no idea. The wheel was turned right. She was clearly trying not to hit anyone. Well, again, we don't know what the intention was. we do know that if there's someone in front of you and you gun your car, you're going to hit them most likely. And it looks like, again, it looks to me like the guy was hit by the car. And what are you going to do? Let's say she did completely panic and now she's just going to drive down the street at high speed and she's going to completely freak out. And she knows that she's been seen. She knows that her license plate has been seen. She knows that she's going to get arrested. She knows that she's going to get charged with some grievous bodily harm or assault, perhaps on a police officer. What then? What's she going to go home and murder, suicide her kids? I don't know. But that's one of the reasons why it escalates very quickly. So, yeah, people say, well, her wheel turned. She's clearly trying not to hit anyone. Or people are saying, well, the officer put himself in front of the car to be able to shoot. I mean, I don't know. I mean, God, what do you even say to people like that? I mean, I have no idea what you would even say to someone like that, that a police officer is so randomly keen to shoot someone that they'll put themselves right in front of a 6,000-pound SUV with the engine revving right in front of them. I mean, that's just mad. People say, the officer had time to step aside. You know, there was some police who took some left-wing journalists who said, you should reason things more clearly, you should think things through, and they took them out for a bunch of training, and the journalists, pretty much without exception, shot or pretend like it was made up, right? But they pretended to shoot, or in the made-up scenario, they, quote, shot every civilian. So I don't mean to laugh, but it's like the officer had time to calmly evaluate the situation, looking up at this giant growling SUV with a clearly deranged and non-compliant, anti-compliant woman. Brothers and sisters, the police say, stop, in the name of love. You just need to stop. Put your hands 10 and 4. Before you open the glove box, say to the officer, I'm going to open the glove box. Is that okay? Before you do anything, check with the officer. Just obey, just comply. It's really not that hard at all. So, the officer had time to step aside. I mean, behind your laptop, we get to watch this over and over again in slow motion. And I would say that if I was standing in front of a car and somebody hit the gas, and I could hear it hitting the gas, and I was just waiting for that split second between the wheels spinning on the ice, digging through the ice and lurching forward, yes, every sane human being would feel threatened, and anybody who says otherwise is just a horrifying liar. Deadly force can't be used to prevent escape. If a reasonable officer perceives an imminent deadly threat, yes, cars can be that. The analysis changes, and that's sort of important. She was escaping a perceived threat, not trying to kill. Again, people who jump in and say that they know what her intentions were are lying through their armpits. So I don't know what to say about that. So here's some other comments. First of all, she's not waving the officers through and has no right to do so, even if she were. She's waving another car through before the officers approach her car. Second, the officers are not randomly searching her. They are approaching her vehicle because she is violating the law. Namely, she is obstructing a lawful enforcement operation. You're not allowed to walk up to or drive up to people who are enforcing the law to make it harder for them to do their jobs. Third, the defense attorney is drawing, this is a comment on X, is drawing a meaningless distinction between an ICE officer and a real police officer. Again, you are not allowed to interrupt a lawful enforcement operation, which is exactly what this woman was doing. The officer, according to this argument, didn't discharge his weapon to prevent her from fleeing. When he discharged his weapon, she had pointed the vehicle at him and pressed the gas. He discharged his weapon in self-defense, and other angles of the video show the woman clearly hit the officer with her car while accelerating. The guy was doing his job. She tried to stop him from doing his job. When he approached her car, she tried to hit him with the car, according to all video evidence. So, what's going on? I mean, I think everybody kind of understands this. So, people in America kind of oppose Democrat policies, a lot of them, right? So, how are they going to win? Well, if you can't convince the voters, you supplement or replace them. So they bring in new voters, both legal and illegal. And of course, the best way to ensure the allegiance of the newly imported voters is to hand out a bunch of free stuff. It's you take money from the public treasury and you give it to immigrant groups, both legal and illegal, and in return they donate a bunch of money to your political party. And this happens on the right as well, but I think it's a little bit more prevalent on the left. So the reason why they are going so hard against ICE is that if, this is back to Ann Coulter's book from, was it 2016, where she said it's been like 11 million illegals in America for like the last 40 years, and she calculates, I think, 20 or 30 million or more. So if illegals leave, then it's quite possible, since the census counts illegals in America, that electoral college representation will go down, particularly in places in California. And if the illegals leave, then it becomes harder to influence, let's be as nice as possible, to influence the election. So the fact that Trump wants to deport illegals is a huge threat to the Democrat Party and its policies. Now, of course, Obama did a whole bunch as well, but back then the Democrats weren't quite as extreme. Now the Democrat position is held by very few people in America. So the Democrats are pouring massive amounts of time, effort, and energy into, like $100 million went to far-left organizations to protest, and I think it goes quite a lot beyond protesting. But the Democrats need to shut down ICE operations in order to ensure their own political survival. The more extreme you become, the less appealing you are to the center of the bell curve, Aristotelian mean general view of the population, and very few people hold the policies of the Democrat Party as their ideal. And so you have to shut down the ICE operations. And you can get more of this from cynical Publius on X. But of course, the best way to shut down ICE was a variety of things. So what you want to do is you want to create martyrs, right? So you'll whip people into a frenzy, whip people into a hysteria, and then people, maybe they're unhappy, maybe they're depressed, maybe they're suicidal, maybe they've got some terminal illness and they want to go out with a sort of a Clint Eastwood bang or something like that. Then you can create martyrs. And the martyrs create protests, the protests create hysteria. And what you want to do, and we saw this, of course, post-Floyd, is you want to make the ICE agents afraid to do their job, right? Which is why people dox the ICE agents. They have to have the masks on. So you want to make them quit. You want to make it too difficult for them to do their job. And you just want them to quit. So you'll harass them, you'll dox them, you'll try to create situations where they're terrified to use any self-protective force, which very much happened after Derek Chauvin and George Floyd and so on. So it's just a way of putting sand in the Vaseline, so to speak. So just as this is from the New York Post, just before I recorded this, they wrote, Renee Nicole Good, the mom who was killed by a federal agent after veering her car towards him, was an anti-ICE, quote, warrior, and was part of a group of activists who worked to document and resist the federal immigration crackdown in Minnesota, the Post can reveal. Renee Good, who moved to the city last year, linked up with the anti-ICE activists through her 6-year-old son's woke charter school, which boasts that it puts social justice first and involving kids in political and social activism, multiple local sources said. A mother named Lisa, whose child attends the same school, told the Post at a growing vigil where Good was killed Wednesday, she was a warrior. She died doing what was right. I mean, it's wild. So this is a hyper-liberal woman, hard leftist, who was willing to take on federal agents to disrupt ICE operations in order to protect largely criminal Somalis. Oh, my God. If a police officer stands in front of your vehicle, there is no option called just go around him, right? That's Bill Cosby, go around. You're detained. Attempting to swerve around an officer after a clear command to stop is a felony in Minnesota. So what does this all mean? Look, the media is quite hysterical. You remember the young fellow in the Charlottesville protests back in the day. He was apparently frightened by activists attacking his car. He gunned it forward. He hit a woman who was, quite obese, and she ended up dying later of a heart attack. And the guy got over 400 years in prison. I would be curious to know how many people who are appalled at this woman getting shot were also appalled at Charlie Kirk getting shot, or who condemned the wildly high prison sentence that the young man got in Charlottesville. How many people do you know are swallowing the mainstream narrative that automatically is a martyr, it's a racist shooting, it's a bad shooting, and so on? Look, evidence could absolutely come out that goes against what your eyes are telling you or telling me. You know, it's early days of it, just happened yesterday, so just about anything could happen. It seems hard to imagine what, but, we got to keep an open mind and innocent until proven guilty and so on. So maybe things will change. But the people who jump immediately to, it was a bad shoot, she was panicked, she was just trying to get away and she was frightened, and people who are jumping to that kind of conclusion right away are dangerously demoralized, disillusioned idiots who can't be deprogrammed. Cannot be deprogrammed. Everyone who gives time, attention, and resources to the hard leftist mainstream media for pushing these kinds of narratives is your enemy. And I'm sorry to inform you, I do not have people like that in my life. I do not have people like that. I would strongly suggest to you, revisit all of your relationships. Not just about this particular thing, but it's about, can you think for yourself? Are you easily programmed into hive mind hatred? Having people around you, if you think for yourself and are rational and curious, having people around you who are MK Ultra'd in a sense into hive mind hatred are extremely dangerous. Boy, if you didn't notice that during COVID, I don't really know what to tell you. So I obviously can't tell anyone else what to do, but I will tell you that I don't have people like that in my life. I consider it far too dangerous and far too demoralizing and far too bizarre. To me, it would be like going into an asylum and living there voluntarily for a month with really crazy people around you. Why would you want that? And those people aren't generally dangerous towards you. This is almost like going into a criminal asylum and putting yourself at risk. They will lie about you. They will backstab you. They will badmouth you. They will say all kinds of appalling things. They will try to get you fired. They will side with the mob against you should you ever be in a situation where you're against the mob. And very dangerous people to have in your life. And they do pour resources into media and other profit centers that are dismantling the liberties, freedoms, and historical equality before the law of the West. So I don't have them in my life. I would not actually be friends with someone who did have those people in their lives. And once you do get the really programmed NPC dangerous attack bots out of your life, it actually becomes a pretty relaxing and happy place to live and to be. And of course, those people also come with their own children. Those children will then talk to your children. And this is how the mind virus kind of spreads. And I suppose the last thing I wanted to say, and I really appreciate you letting me dip my toe back into the Truth About series. I hope you'll let me know what you think. But the one thing that I will also say, and this is true for a lot of people who, I was never particularly pro-Trump, but I didn't like that the media was lying about him. I'm a truth teller. I'm an honest guy. Thou shalt not bear false witness, and thou shalt not steal were my two favorite commandments growing up as a Christian. So I didn't like the lies, and I did push back a lot against those lies. So those people who weren't automatically condemning Trump from 2015 onwards, we faced, for me, it was only half a decade because I got deplatformed 5.5 years ago. But we faced crazy amounts of violence. Crazy amount of violence. And not only did it come from the left as a whole, but the left did not condemn it. So talk to people if you are on the fence about this, which, it's fine. It's important to be skeptical. But if you're on the fence about this, talk to people who have lived through the kind of violence that people skeptical of the left have been through. So I did 30 plus years as a whole, but sort of in the public eye, faced a lot of violence, bomb threats, death threats. And when I'd go to give speeches, people would attack the venues. We actually had to go in New York to go visit a guy who was in the hospital because he'd been attacked for wanting to attend one of the Nights for Freedom. And when I was doing speeches in Australia, the leftists attacked buses, attacked the venues, they threw these giant batteries through the windows. When I tried to give a speech in Canada, a priest was attacked, and it was just wild. Just couldn't even give a speech in New Zealand because of the bomb threats at the venue. So just so people understand, this is a very important thing to understand. Again, don't just take my word for it. Talk to people who've been skeptical of the left for a while. It's very, very important to understand that when you have been sort of on the receiving end of this kind of violent, terroristic, and brutal machinery, when they then claim to be horrified by violence, bullshit. They, in general, now, of course, it's not like every leftist attacked myself or people that I knew, but it wasn't condemned. It were people like, whoa, let's root this out. Let's put a stop to this right away, right? So they have no particular problem with violence, and so that's terrible because violence is terrible. So they have no particular problem with violence. So when they then, this violence is unacceptable, that's not true. I mean, yeah, it is unacceptable. Of course, violence is unacceptable, but it's not unacceptable to them. And once you've lived through that kind of stuff and gone up to give speeches thinking there are 5 lasers on your forehead, and Lord knows they can fit, you just have a different perspective of the world, and you have a different perspective of how dangerous people are when programmed by propaganda. So I myself have not had, for probably 15 to 20 years, I haven't had people in my life, either from the right or the left, who are easily programmed and don't think for themselves, because they're very dangerous people to have around. And I can tell you, it's a great life. It's as good a life as you can get in the world, is to not be around reactive, hair trigger people who approve of violence in their blackened hearts and are easily programmed into escalation. So this is one of these moments where it illuminates, like a flashbang, right? Or hopefully like a sunrise. It illuminates the people that you have in your life. Hold fast to those people who are skeptical and think things through, who are cautious in their analyses. And I strongly, strongly recommend revisiting the relationships with a very serious and skeptical eye with those people who are escalating, programmed, and have a secret, vicious, wound-licking love of violence. freedomain.com/donate to help out the show. Thanks, everyone. I'm back. Well, at least for now. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.